Steve?
So, Steve, what can you tell us about the new additions to the Republican tax plan?
Well, look, the fact is it's not tax reform. It doesn't make things better for the average American, and it will increase the deficit, as Joe said. So let's just look at some numbers that will show us how this works. So this is the change in after-tax income for people based on this tax bill. And what you can see is that for people who earn over $100,000 a year, their after-tax income will go up anywhere from 3 to as much as 5.2% if you happen to be in the sweet spot between $500,000 and $1 million a year of income. But for people at or below the middle, the increase in your after-tax income is much less. It's 2% going all the way down to 0.6%. This didn't have to happen. You could have made this, in fact, in the House bill, it was pretty much a flat line across here. In terms of the increase in after-tax income, and then later in the Senate and the conference, they added more goodies for wealthy people, like that 37% tax rate that you heard mention of. Now let's talk for a second about Marco Rubio, who went to the mattress and said that I'm not going to vote for this unless you fix the child tax credit. So here's what happens with the child tax credit, which is being doubled, but is also being allowed to apply to people with higher incomes. The only way to get the full child tax credit is to have an income of $400,000 a year, in which case, if you have 2 children, you get $4,000 more. If you have a $100,000 income, you only get $2,000. If you are at the minimum wage, a single parent with a minimum wage of $14,500, you can only get $75. And here's what Marco Rubio got. Marco Rubio got this little orange piece, $600 for people who make $30,000 a year. They still only get a total of $800 of child tax credit. So even the child tax credit is biased toward the wealthy. And then lastly, to Joe's point, and certainly an important point, let's look at the deficit. It's important to notice that the deficits were going up anyway, even before this tax bill was passed. And what this tax bill does is it adds on to that deficit enough to push us back over $1 trillion of deficits in 2021. We haven't been at $1 trillion of deficits since 2012, when Barack Obama was trying to save the country and was roundly criticized by the Republicans for doing so. And then when you get out toward the end, the individual tax cuts, quote, expire, and so it makes the deficit numbers look slightly better. Those tax cuts will be extended, and the deficit will just simply get larger as you get to those out years.
And if you're a young voter, really quickly, just explain, put in real terms, what does it mean if you're a millennial? And the Republicans have just added $1.5 trillion to the national debt, and Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. We're coming up with 30, 40, $50 trillion in unpaid liabilities on top of the $20 trillion. Talk about how crushing that will be to somebody who's 25 years old today when they're my age, 54.
Well, what's going to happen even before they're 54 is that taxes are going to start to have to go up.
Skyrocket.
Skyrocket. Services are going to have to be cut. Your children, who are millennials, my children who are millennials, are going to pay for our retirement. They're going to pay for our Medicare. They're going to pay for our Social Security, because there is nothing in the trust funds. We put nothing aside, and you have these huge, 10, 20, 30, more than the debt. You have tens of trillions of unfunded liabilities to pay for the Medicare and Social Security for all the people sitting around this table.
So in the 1950s, when my parents started working, there were 15 people working for every 1 person on Social Security. My children will have 2 people working for every 1 person on Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid.
But we could have dealt with that if we had done it the right way. It should have been funded like an insurance program, where you pay into it during your lifetime and you get money out of it after.
Republicans and Democrats don't want to talk about this. We're going to have to fix this.
We're going to have to.
And it's not going to be like Republicans want to fix this, because Republicans say, yeah, let's do entitlement reform. We're just going to kick a lot of people off of Medicaid. No, we're going to have to look at Medicare. We're going to have to look at Social Security, and we're going to have to save it for our children and save this economy for our children. But every time the Republicans talk about taking care of this, all they do is, let's go after Medicaid.
Well, but they also, in fairness, they want to cut Medicare and Social Security as well. But their idea of saving it is to cut the benefits. Paul Ryan has made very clear that next year's agenda, which they can also do a lot of this, not Social Security, but they can do Medicare with 50 votes, is to go after Medicare. Donald Trump has said he won't do it, but he said a lot of things he hasn't done later. We'll see what happens.
And I'm also tired of hawks talking about how we always need more defense spending. Doesn't matter necessarily what it is, but let's just keep piling on the defense spending when clearly the national debt is the greatest looming national security challenge we face right now.
And you know, and we don't spend a whole lot of time on this program or any programs actually talking about one of the elements that Steve just alluded to, actually pointed out, Marco Rubio's child tax credit. The hardest job in this country is being poor. And tax bills like this ensure that poverty for many, many people is going to be both a life sentence and a death sentence. And we ignore it.
Why should we have just given $4,000 to people who make $400,000
Yes.
and $75 to people who get the minimum wage?
Yeah.
Well, which also goes to Social Security and Medicare. If you're going to save Social Security and Medicare, Republicans, you're going to have to do more than just cut benefits. You're going to have to make sure that people like Steve Rattner and Joe Scarborough don't get off free. We're going to have to get less in benefits. They're going to have to means test it. They're going to have to make sure that Medicare and Social Security help working class Americans and middle class Americans and people like us with our own retirement plan, and don't draw from it. It's going to have to be a balanced approach.
This White House says that they're looking after the forgotten man and woman of America.
Well, if you call multinational corporations the forget, this is also, again, this is another reason why I said before, I wish I were a socialist because I would love to be a Democrat and run against Republicans that voted for the health care bill, that voted for this tax bill. Because, hell, even running in 1994 as a right-wing conservative, I would have torn those two bills to shreds. And it would have gotten 75%. Because they're not conservative bills. They're radical bills, and they hurt working class Americans, they hurt middle class Americans, and they're just payoffs. We all know. Everybody knows. This is payoff to the richest donors in America. That's the only reason you would write a tax bill this way. I would never support a tax bill in Northwest Florida that looks like this in a million years.
And don't forget the special deal for real estate developers in this tax bill. They come out better than any other class of...
Donald Trump, you're saying. Donald Trump and his family.
Donald Trump and his family.
For their brand.
Get up to $1 billion. The Trump family, some estimates suggest, will make $1 billion off of this tax cut.
That's important. Them first. Still ahead on Morning Joe, it's not uncommon for countries to share intelligence, but it does seem unusual for presidents to publicly thank one another for it. What we're learning this morning about the second call between President Trump and Vladimir Putin in less than a week.